Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to completely demystify the dense framework of Philippine labor standards. We're going to uncover exactly what your rights are at work. Because look, whether you're clocking in at an office, maybe telecommuting from your couch, or even managing a massive team, knowing your legal baselines, it isn't just helpful, it's absolutely essential.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, your time on the clock. Next, wages, pay, and compensation. Then we'll look at taking time off, followed by protections for specific workers. And finally, the limits of employer power. Let's get started.
Section 1. Your time on the clock. Navigating hours, breaks, and overtime.
So it all really starts with this foundational principle: a fair day's wage for a fair day's work. You've probably heard it called no work, no pay. Honestly, this is the absolute anchor for everything we're exploring today. Simply put, if you don't work, well, you generally aren't entitled to pay, unless, of course, a specific contract or leave law steps in to protect you.
Right, so the baseline rule here is a maximum of 8 normal hours of work a day. But hey, the modern workplace has completely evolved, hasn't it? Under Republic Act 11165, that's the Telecommuting Act, flexible arrangements, like working from home, are totally valid. The catch? It has to be mutually agreed upon, and it literally cannot diminish your minimum labor standards. Remote workers must be treated equally to on-site workers, no exceptions.
Now, what happens when you inevitably work beyond those normal 8 hours? Well, your employer owes you a legally mandated overtime premium. We're talking an additional 25% of your regular wage on an ordinary day. And if you're grinding away on a rest day or a holiday, that premium jumps to 30%. Sure, there are exceptions, like if you're on a compressed work week doing 4 12-hour shifts or in certain roles with built-in overtime. But those require voluntary agreement and, again, absolutely no loss of benefits.
Plus, if your shift falls between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., you get a night shift differential. That adds an extra 10% to your regular wage for every single hour you work during that specific graveyard window. Okay, but you might be wondering about non-compensable hours. We all know about the regular 60-minute meal break. But what about, say, a sudden power outage or a quick bathroom run? Interestingly, under the personal comfort doctrine, brief interruptions just to use the restroom are fully compensable. But for power interruptions or idle time, that answer depends entirely on your freedom to actually leave.
It basically comes down to this distinction. If the employer controls your time during a short brownout, meaning, you're required to sit at your desk staring at a blank screen, or maybe you're restricted to company premises under the bunkhouse rule, then you are engaged to wait. That means you must be paid. But if you are completely freed from your duties and allowed to leave the premises altogether, you're merely waiting to be engaged, and that becomes off-the-clock unpaid time.
Section 2. Wages, pay, and compensation. Understanding your paycheck. Now that we've mapped out your time, let's talk about the money you actually take home. There's this fascinating, legally crucial distinction between a wage and a salary. They aren't just synonyms. Jurisprudence notes that wages typically compensate manual or rank-and-file labor, whereas salaries denote white-collar or managerial work. And because of this difference, the law actually shields rank-and-file wages from legal garnishment or execution in ways that managerial salaries simply are not protected. Pretty interesting, right?
So when your employer hands over your pay, which, by the way, must be in legal tender at least twice a month, they are strictly prohibited from making unauthorized deductions. Outside of legally mandated premiums like SSS, PhilHealth, PEG-EBIG, your taxes, and authorized union dues, your pay is yours. Also, if there's a sudden mandated minimum wage increase that accidentally wipes out the intended pay differences between job grades, that's called wage distortion, and employers are legally required to fix it. Oh, and for those in hospitality, remember that collected service charges must be distributed completely and equally among covered employees. No skimming allowed.
You also really need to keep in mind this massive distinction regarding extra compensation. Your 13th month pay is fiercely protected by law. It is absolutely demandable. A holiday bonus, however, that is entirely an act of management prerogative. It's totally at your boss's discretion. The only exception is if it's become a long-standing, uninterrupted company practice. Under the principle of non-diminution of benefits, employers cannot just unilaterally strip away perks they've consistently handed out.
Section 3. Taking time off. Your legal rights to paid leave. Let's see how these labor standards protect you during major life events, guaranteeing your right to step away from work while maintaining your livelihood. Take that massive number, 105. That represents the days of fully paid maternity leave guaranteed for a live childbirth under Republic Act 11-2010, regardless of the mode of delivery. It's a profound legal entitlement. It even tacks on 15 extra days if the mother happens to be a solo parent.
And the safety nets extend way beyond just that. Sure, regular employees get 5 days of service incentive leave, but special laws really empower workers with specific needs. You've got 7 days of solo parent leave, paternity leave for a married man's first 4 children, up to 2 whole months for gynecological surgeries, and even up to 10 days of paid leave to protect female victims who need to attend to medical or legal matters under the VAWC Act. That's the Violence Against Women and Children Act.
Section 4. Protections for specific workers. Ensuring safe and fair workspaces.
Beyond those general rules for everyone, the law actually steps in specifically to balance the scales for uniquely positioned groups in the workforce. For instance, the law is incredibly rigid regarding working minors. It strictly prohibits those under 15 from conventional employment, making rare exceptions only for those working directly under their parents or maybe in public entertainment with a really strict dole permit. For those between 15 and 18, work is allowed, but the law aggressively shields them from absolutely any hazardous environments.
The law also actively adapts to modern workplace dynamics, which is great. Historically, proving sexual harassment required a manager or someone with moral ascendancy demanding favors. But Republic Act 11-1313, the Safe Spaces Act, vastly expanded these protections. It penalizes gender-based harassment even without that moral ascendancy element. That means abusive or hostile behavior from a peer, or even a subordinate, whether it's physical or happening in an online group chat, is definitively illegal.
Section 5. The limits of employer power, balancing authority and rights.
Finally, let's examine the ultimate tug-of-war in labor law, your individual rights versus the employer's right to actually run their business. Look, businesses must be able to operate and adapt. That's exactly why employers possess what is legally called management prerogative. It's their inherent right to set productivity standards, change working hours, and transfer employees based on their own business judgment. But, and this is a big but, this right is not an absolute blank check.
These maneuvers absolutely have to be exercised fairly. Take hiring, for example. An employer can only legally limit hiring based on traits like gender if it constitutes a bona fide occupational qualification. Basically, it has to be an absolute necessity for the role, like, say, hiring a female actor to play a female character. Similarly, transferring employees is totally valid, but only if it involves absolutely no demotion in rank or a pay cut. Even post-employment non-compete clauses are strictly scrutinized to make sure they're actually reasonable in time, geography, and trade.
So the crucial takeaway here is that management power is forcefully restrained by justice and fair play. It is totally unlawful to decline hiring, reduce wages, or forcibly retire someone strictly based on their age. The law also explicitly criminalizes discriminatory practices against individuals simply because they are a woman, a solo parent, or a person with a disability. In fact, under Republic Act 7277, qualified PWDs are legally entitled to the exact same terms, conditions, and compensation as able-bodied employees. Full stop.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today, looking directly at the letter of the law regarding everything from your daily time clock to your ultimate workplace protections. So, now that you understand the rules governing your time, your paycheck, and your specific protections under Philippine labor standards, I want to leave you with this to consider. Does your daily work reality actually reflect these legal baselines? Thank you for exploring this with me.